Hi everybody, this is Lisa with Verbling, and in this hour we're going to have an English reading class and hopefully a little bit of a discussion. For this class I chose a recent book review about a book that has just been released. It is written by an author, an American author who is quite popular these days. He has written several other books that many people like and have read a lot. He also writes for, I think it's the New Yorker magazine and maybe some other publications, but he often writes about interesting things to me. So since I'm teaching the class, I get to choose what we read. So it's interesting to me, and I hope it will be interesting to you. And it's something a little bit different. Sometimes we read articles about technology, science, business topics. This one is a book review, so it's this person explaining what he thinks about this particular book. So we will read it together, and then we will talk about the topic, and you guys can tell me whether or not you think it would be a book that you would be interested in reading. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this guy. His name is Malcolm Gladwell, and he's written books called The Tipping Point and Blink and some other ones. And they're pretty fun, easy reads about humans, success, why we do the things that we do, and what psychology and social sciences tell us about us. And so he kind of takes the science and the studies and then breaks it down into what we call layman terms and tells stories that helps us understand what the scientists are telling us through their research. So, all right, let's welcome everybody. Let's see, people are coming in, so I'm just kind of talking here. The cat is here with me today, so everybody can say hi. This is Raindrop. She'll be walking around. So hi, Amparo. How are you doing today?
Hi, teacher. I'm doing well, thank you. What about you?
Good. Pretty good. Hamid, he's only feeling so-so.
Yes.
So-so. Just kind of so-so. Anything you want to share with us today, Hamid?
Today I made one sample exam for my next exam.
Oh.
And it was good.
Okay. You did a practice exam?
Yes.
Okay.
By alone.
Uh-huh. Okay. And so you did pretty good?
Yes.
Oh, good. Is that for the exam that you're taking for the job, the
this exam is about academic exam.
Oh, okay, academic stuff. All right. Good. All right. Ishmael, how are you doing?
I am fine, thank you, Lisa. Hi, everybody. How are you, Lisa?
Good. Welcome. Haven't heard your voice for a while. Okay,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Shabazz, how are you? Hello? Bilal? All right, maybe you don't know that. And Tarek, how are you?
Yes, I'm fine. I'm doing good.
Okay.
What about
Everybody. Okay, so welcome everybody. You guys, I think, all know how this works. Shabazz, I didn't hear from you, so okay, there, your microphone's on now. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty low. How about you?
Good. Shabazz, where
I'm
do
pretty
you?
good. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Where are you from?
I'm from Pakistan.
Pakistan. Okay. Are you
I'm
living?
from Pakistan. Yeah.
Uh-huh. I can hear you. Good. Great. Okay, well,
Yeah.
welcome to the class. I'm going to put the article up now in the screen share.
Okay.
And Hamid has posted the link for us in the Verbling chat and also in the Google chat. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amparo, your Verbling chat isn't
I got
working?
it.
Amparo?
Not
Yeah.
anymore.
Oh.
You can use Google Chat.
Yeah,
Lisa?
yeah, that's fine. I'll be switching back and forth between the Verbling and the Google. So, But Amparo, you can just talk if you have a question too. Just
Okay.
speak up. All right. So I'm just gonna get started so we can use our hour together. So you guys, this is what you paid for. So let's get going. This is called Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath Champions the Underdog. That's the title of this article that I pulled from the Los Angeles Times. Probably you guys have heard of the New York Times, but Los Angeles also has a newspaper that's called the Los Angeles Times. And this is an article from there. I'm going to just make sure I give the guy credit here. This is a link to the actual article on their website. I just put it here in the Google Docs so that we can make it larger and I can do some bolding and things like that when I explain what the words are. So it's written by this guy, Hector Tobar. And Malcolm, let me just explain a little bit. Malcolm Gladwell, like I said, that's his name. He's an author, American author. This is the name of his newest book that just came out like a couple of days ago, David and Goliath. And do you guys know the story of David and Goliath? Have you heard that in your own languages?
No.
No?
Yep.
David, I think it's a biblical story. David and Goliath. So David is it's kind of the story that explains like the underdog, the person who is weaker, going up a person who is much bigger and much stronger and winning. So in English, whenever people talk about a story that is like David and Goliath, they're talking about David who went up against Goliath. And Goliath was a big, like, monster-like, and David was able to defeat him or beat him with, I think it was just some rocks or something, yes.
Like Hulk?
Like what?
Hulk?
The Hulk? Yeah.
The real one.
Yeah. This is old days, in the old days. So yeah, so Goliath now means somebody's big, like Hulk, like the Hulk, yeah. And David represents somebody who is not necessarily strong, but smart and can overcome somebody a lot bigger and stronger than themselves. So this is what this book is about, is Malcolm Gladwell is championing, this is the verb to champion. That means when you support or you cheer on the underdog. And I just want to make sure we understand all the words in the title first. The underdog is the person who is not supposed to win. So when you have a soccer game, for example, say if you have like Barcelona, for example, is like a world-class team versus like, I don't know, another team that might not win against them, but a team from maybe, I don't know where, that's not very good, probably they are called the underdog. But if sometimes the underdog actually wins, and so that's what his book is going to tell us about. All right, and I'm going to read this first part here and highlight it, sorry, and then have people read as we go along, and I'm going to pretty much go over the words that I have put in bold, and if you have any other questions, please speak up, okay? So Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath champions the underdog. Malcolm Gladwell explains the many advantages gained through adversity in David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. Okay, Amparo, why don't you read that part?
Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath champion the underdog. Malcolm Gladwell explained the many advantages gained through adversity in David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants.
Yes. Thank you. So in this book, he's going to explain, he's going to tell us about the many advantages. I think you probably know that word, but whatever's good about something. So the advantages gained, what you get through adversity. Adversity is stuff that's hard. So sometimes if you have a difficult life or things have been hard, you work harder and therefore you succeed more. So this is the kind of story that he's going to tell us about. So that's the full title of his book. That's why they're putting it in these quotes here, the single quotes. David and Goliath, underdogs, so those people who are not supposed to win because they're not supposed to be as good. Misfits, people who don't fit into society so well. They look a little funky maybe, or you're kind of not sure that they're going to make it. You're wondering something about them, but they do. And then the art of battling giants, so going up against giants. Obviously, a giant represents anything that would be big. So it's not a real giant. It's like going up against maybe big businesses or the establishment of education or against the most, the best teams of the world, that kind of thing. So that's what that means. All right, Hamid, were you going to show a picture of, okay, Hamid's sharing with us a picture of Malcolm Gladwell because he has some nice hair. I thought you were going to show a picture of Malcolm Gladwell. Let's get a picture. I want you guys to see Malcolm. He's a pretty well-known person here, but he does have some funky hair. So there you go. He's a fun guy. And like I said, he's written lots of books, so he is definitely somebody that you will read about or hear about if you are interested in this type of stuff. Kind of more intellectual academic reading for people who aren't necessarily in school but still like to learn about this type of stuff. Okay? All right, we have Robson. Hi there, Robson. We just started reading, so Hamid's been providing some links in the Verbling chat and the Google chat for people who are joining us. I'm going to keep reading, and so we can keep going because it is a little bit long, and I want to have time to talk about it a little bit. All right, so here is the actual article. What if we lived in a world where the weak were really strong and all of our disadvantages could easily become advantages? In his new book, David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants, best-selling writer Malcolm Gladwell tells us we're already living in that kind of world. Even something as debilitating as dyslexia can be an ambitious man's ticket to success. Okay. So, Hamid?
Okay, what if we lived in a world where the weak were really strong and all of our disadvantages could easily become advantages? In his new book, David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants, best-selling writer Malcolm Gladwell tells us we are already living in that kind of world. Even something as debilitating as dyslexia can be an ambitious man's ticket to success.
Yeah. This one you got to make sure you get all the sounds in there. It's debilitating. So.
Debilitating.
Yeah. There you go. Good. So he's basically talking about how can you turn disadvantages, so the things that you typically think are not helpful to success, into something that does give you an advantage or helps you become successful. So that's what he's going to be talking about, and he's saying we already actually live in that kind of world because that's what actually happens with some people. Even something, even something that even there gives emphasis. So even something as debilitating. Debilitating is like something that makes you weaker, less able. So a lot of people think of dyslexia as a debilitating because if you guys know, maybe this word is similar in your own language. Oftentimes the scientific words are. Dyslexia is when a person cannot read. They have a hard time reading because maybe they see the words backwards or they have some problem with reading. So it's not just so simple for them. And that can be debilitating. It can cause them problems, but not necessarily for a person who is ambitious. A person who is ambitious is somebody who we call them a go-getter. Somebody who they don't care, they're just going to keep going for. So if a person is ambitious, that means they will try hard, they will work hard, they will do whatever it takes to have success. Okay? So that's what they're talking about here. So even a person who has some, what normal people or usually people would think of as a problem, dyslexia, it doesn't have to be. In fact, it could be an advantage to somebody. to an ambitious person, not to a person who feels like a victim or who feels sad, but somebody who's really going to go after success. All right. The one trait in a lot of dyslexic people I know is that by the time we got out of college, our ability to deal with failure was very highly developed, says Gary Cohn, a man of humble origins whose bold decisions take him to the top of the U.S. financial industry. I wouldn't be where I am today without my dyslexia. Hi, Ahmad. Ismail, why don't you read that for us?
Okay. The one trait in a lot of dyslexic people I know is that by the time we got out of college, our ability to deal with failure was very highly developed, says Gray Khan, a man of humble origin whose bold decisions take him to the top of the US financial industry. I wouldn't be where I am today without my dyslexia.
Good. So the one trait, whenever you talk about people's traits, it could be personal traits or it's like a characteristic. It's the one thing that he noticed in all these people who had dyslexia. So a person who has dyslexia is known as a dyslexic person. The trait that they have is this ability to deal with failure. Okay, so another way to talk about traits could be like, okay, Malcolm Gladwell, one trait of his is his hair, but that's kind of like a physical trait. But this other type of trait that he's talking about is more like a personality, somebody who has the ability to keep going. And in this case, it was the ability, right here, the ability to deal with failure. So people who have dyslexia, a lot of times they are failing. They can't keep up with people in reading. This class, for example, might be difficult for somebody with dyslexia because we are just reading out loud and everything. It might be a hard thing for them, but because of that, because they have to deal with that all the time, they get real good skill. So it's okay to fail. They keep going. It doesn't stop them. The humble origins, this man is described as coming from humble origins. That just means like you weren't rich, you didn't have a big fancy house or something. You just were a humble person, a simple person. But even coming from simple beginnings, origins is beginnings, your life, like when you were a child, for example, he's been making these, what they're describing as bold decisions. These are very strong decisions. Maybe they're decisions that other people wouldn't make because they're maybe too risky. So, and these decisions have helped him come to the top. So he has been very successful in the financial industry. So making money, maybe that means like the stock market, probably something like that. And what this person is saying is that's why he's where he is, because of the dyslexia. So he was able to overcome this this hardship, this issue that he had to deal with. Gladwell, a staff writer at The New Yorker, has sold a ton of books explaining seemingly counterintuitive and complex arguments about psychology and the social sciences to a mass audience. In David and Goliath, his mission is to show us how our thinking about power, influence, and success is often misguided and wrong. Okay. Robson, are you there? Haven't heard
Yes.
from you yet. Okay, good. Awesome.
Listen. Okay. Gladwell, a staff writer at the New Yorker, has sold a ton of books explaining seemingly counterintuitive and complex arguments about psychology and the social sciences to a mass audience. In David and Goliath,
Goliath.
his mission is to show us how our think about power, influence, and success is often misguided and wrong.
Right. Yep. So here we go. Staff writer. That just means he's one of the writers on staff at The New Yorker. He writes articles for that's the name of a magazine. It's a good place to find interesting articles. I don't usually go there for these classes because they're usually long articles, so we wouldn't be able to finish a whole article in a class. But they're good articles. Lots of good vocabulary. So he sold a ton of books. You guys might know this. We say this a lot in America here, a ton. If we're talking about a lot of something, we might just say, oh yeah, a ton of. So like, you know, he ate a ton of pizza last night, or they bought a ton of new uniforms for the soccer team. It just means a lot. So he sold a lot of books. And he likes to talk about things that seem counterintuitive. So the part here, counter, means against your intuition. So things that you would think are right are actually wrong. And so that's what Gladwell, this Malcolm Gladwell author, he likes to examine these kinds of things where we think we know what we're talking about and we think, oh yeah, that's the way it is. And then he shows us through psychology experiments and things that they've done how that's actually wrong. And so he makes these counterintuitive and complex. So complex just means the opposite of simple. So they're not simple arguments. They're complex. They have lots of parts to them. They're sophisticated is another word you could use. Sophisticated arguments. And he uses the sciences of psychology and social sciences or social studies, like where people study human behavior. And he likes to be able to explain that to a mass audience. Whenever we're talking about a mass, or we could say the masses, that's like lay people, people who are not necessarily scientists or psychologists, people just like us who just want to read a good story and understand something a little better. So he's going to show us that how our thinking about power, influence, yeah, I think you guys know what power is. Influence is when you are able to get somebody to do something, or how things help you get something. They influence your life. And success, of course, that you guys know what that is often misguided. So the miss part here tells you that it's wrong. So misguided, it means wrong. Misguided and wrong. So a lot of times we think we're doing the right thing, and in fact we are misguided. We're not doing it the way we should be doing it, perhaps. Okay. I'm just going along telling you guys what this stuff means, but please speak up if you don't understand my explanation, or if you want me to say it a different way, or you have a question. Hamid, what did you write there? Impact.
It is similar meaning with influence.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
It's kind of, yeah, the influence, the power, influence, and success. Yes. Impact wouldn't exactly be the same thing right here. If you have an impact on somebody, it means that's how you affect them. So the impact is more like the effect on somebody. But the influence is a little bit different in the sense that, like, if I'm going to influence you, Hamid, that means I'm going to try to maybe convince you to do something. Like, I want to tell you, you know, you should really learn about this, Hamid, and I'm trying to make it so that you do something that I think is good for you, for example. Okay?
Like so, recommendation?
Yeah. Also, so for example, parents can have a strong influence on their children. Sometimes they don't have any influence. So if your child doesn't listen to anything you say, like a teenager maybe, they don't have any influence on their child because the child doesn't believe them, doesn't want to listen to them. Sometimes a teacher can have a strong influence on a student, meaning the way that they speak to them could be positive, or it could also be a negative influence. Yeah, Amparo, it's something that will affect you. Okay, so like the amount of money you have could influence what kind of education you get. So it could make a difference. So people can have influence on other people. Your living situation can have an influence on what you're able to do in your life. But what he's going to talk about in the book, I think, is a lot of times we think, for example, that the influence of money is really important. So we might say, like, you know, rich people are always going to have better opportunities, and therefore they will always be more successful. Some people believe that. but he's going to show you that it's not necessarily true. So different influences, you could say, have different impacts. So an influence can have an impact on your life, but we don't necessarily know if it's always going to be what we think it's going to be. We might think, oh, that's going to have a good influence on your success as a chemist, right? Like, for example, Hamid, you might think, I really need to go abroad and work in Germany, for example. That's going to be a good influence on my career. I will have a good influence on my ability to succeed. And maybe you don't get to do that, and you think of it as a negative thing, but later, because your life changed, you actually look back and you say, oh, well, I'm glad I didn't get to do that. This other thing happened, and it's better. So that's how it kind of is. Yes. All right. Is this the same disease that some children who... Okay, yes. Yes, exactly. Dyslexia. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. When a dyslexic person has a hard time with words the way that we can just read them linearly, they reverse the letters sometimes. Sometimes they see a letter on top of it, below it. Sometimes they see things more like three-dimensional. 3D. Yeah, but the basic thing is that it makes it difficult for them to read. So in our modern day life, just like we're doing right now, I'm doing a lot of talking, you guys are doing a little bit of talking, but we're doing a lot of reading and looking at words. And for those people with dyslexia, that could be very frustrating, and for us, it's not so difficult, All right. We have, I think, a very rigid and limited definition of what an advantage is, Gladwell writes. When we see the giant, why do we automatically assume the battle is his for the winning? As always, Gladwell populates his pages with insights illustrated by one memorable character study and anecdote after another. I'm going to stop it there. Okay. I think I'm switching back and forth, so let's see. All right. Shabazz, do you want to read that part?
Yes, why not?
Sure, thank you.
We have, I think, a very rigid and limited definition of what an advantage is. What an advantage is. Gladwell writes, when we see the giant, why do we automatically assume the battle is his for the winning? As we always, Gladwell populates his pages with insight illustrated by one memorable character study and
anecdote.
What is the word, madam?
Anecdote.
Anecdote after another.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah. Good. All right. So we have, I think. So he's saying we think of things very rigidly and very limited. So we're not very open-minded or very flexible in our thinking. We just think it's one way. We automatically assume. So we see, this person is really big, for example, the giant, and we automatically assume they're going to win. That's what he's talking about. All right. So then this is actually the beginning of another paragraph, but we're just reading this first sentence. As always, Gladwell populates. To populate something is he puts in his pages. He puts in lots of stories, and they're called his pages with insights. When you have an insight, it means you have like an aha moment, like, oh, this is an interesting story. It's going to show you something to learn. You can learn something. The way we talk about insights is we get an insight. It means we see something that we didn't see before. And these are illustrated. Illustrated also means shown. So these insights are shown by these stories that he's telling us. And these stories, these anecdotes, anecdote is just a kind of a fantasy word for a story. A lot of time in science, people who've studied science, you probably know that anecdote, they call it anecdotal evidence, is not accepted in science. Anecdotal evidence is just like a story. So like if Amparo says, well, my cousin, she knows how to do this, and she's really good at this, and she won, and I think it's because of this. that's just a story. It's not really like a test. You know, it's not a research experiment. But anecdotal stories are fun to read, and they can show or illustrate certain types of things that we can learn. And he uses lots of memorable characters. So the stories that you read about in his book, that you can remember them. They're very memorable. They're interesting. Maybe they're funny. Maybe they're fantastic. But they're not boring stories. So he's a good storyteller usually. All right. And this is what this reviewer is saying. He can be an efficient and persuasive storyteller. And in this book, his cast of Davids, so those are the people who are the underdogs or the misfits, include French Impressionist painters, undersized basketball players, and civil rights marchers. His Goliaths, so those are the big guys, include the French art establishment, basketball traditionalists, and segregationist police chiefs. All right, those are some big words in there. Alexandra, go for it.
He can be an efficient and persuasive storyteller. Oops. Moment, I'll find it here. He can be an efficient and persuasive storyteller, and in this book, his cast of Davids,
yeah.
Davids include French Impressionist painters, undersized basketball players, and civil rights marchers. His Goliaths include the French art establishment, basketball traditionalists, and segregationist police chiefs.
Yeah. All right. So, Alexandra, you missed the beginning part of the class where we talked about David and Goliath. So, David and Goliath is a story.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, you know it. Okay, good. Perfect. So, Davids are the underdogs. So the word efficient here just means he is able to tell a story efficiently, so in a short amount of time, not drawing out the whole long book with lots of long, boring stories. And he's also very persuasive. Persuasive is a similar word into that word of influence, Hamid. When you persuade somebody to do something, Amparo, I think that's what you were talking about more. Your definition is like persuading. But you can also influence in the same way. But persuading is you actually want to convince somebody of something. So in this book, Malcolm is trying to get us to believe what he says because he has a point of view, and he wants us to agree with his point of view. So his stories illustrate his point of view. So it talks about all these different guys as the underdogs, the Davids, and the Goliaths are these bigger entities like the French art establishment. So those are the people who define what French art should look like, right? Basketball traditionalists, those people who think it should be done one way, the very traditional way. And then if you guys know about the United States history, where we had slavery and we had segregation, so a segregationist police chief would be a police chief who believes that blacks should be segregated from whites. And that is certainly how it was, especially in the South, in the United States many years ago. People were described as segregationists if they believed that there should be separate places for blacks and separate places for whites. Okay. But David and Goliath isn't just about underdogs defeating giants. It's also, under Gladwell's stretching of the Goliath metaphor, about the strategies underdogs use to overcome societal obstacles and tackle personal challenges. I think I'm going to leave it there because that's kind of a lot. All right. Got a lot of big words in this article here. All right, I'm going to go to Ahmad.
Just a minute. But David and Goliath, isn't just about underdogs defeating giants. It's also under Gladwell's stretching of the Goliath metaphor about strategies underdogs use to overcome social obstacles and tackle personal challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not just about defeating. So to defeat somebody is to beat them, to win to win in a contest or a sport or something. In the metaphor, do you guys understand the word metaphor? He's using a story as an example of something. So when you have a metaphor, you're not saying it very directly, but you're like making a comparison. And so he's comparing these, and he's stretching them a little bit, he says. So they're not exactly the same as Goliath. When you stretch something, you're pulling it, but in this case, it also could mean like stretching the truth. You're kind of making it fit the way you want it to fit, but it's not necessarily exactly right. Okay, so he's also talking about the strategies that these people use. What do these so-called underdogs do, or how do they overcome societal obstacles? So that's the difficulties that they find in our societies, in our communities, and how do they tackle personal challenges? To tackle something in American football, if you're watching American football, the guys tackle each other. They grab each other and throw each other to the ground. That's a tackle. But to tackle something is also to get it done or to work with it. So if I want to tackle a personal challenge, like maybe I have a personal challenge, I want to lose 10 pounds. So if I tackle my weight, for example, I go on a diet or I go exercise or I stop eating all the cookies or something like that. So to tackle something means to work with it, to do something about it. So are you, is Alexandra, yeah, are you tackling a cold? you gotta tackle your cold. That's your obstacle of the day is your cold, and you have to tackle it. All right, so that's good. So you can use it in lots of different ways to tackle something, but it's just to like get it done. You have, like, if you have a report you have to write, and you've been procrastinating, you're like, I don't want to do it, and then you said, fine, I'm going to tackle that project this evening. That means you're going to go do it. You're going to try to get it done. All right. As Gladwell widens his arguments, venturing into topics as diverse as teacher-student ratios and the Holocaust, David and Goliath becomes an uneven book, alternately compelling and essential, and then scattershot and unconvincing. All right, so here's where he starts talking more about his opinion. Amparo, why don't you read that for us?
Gladwell widens his arguments, venturing into topics as diverse as teacher-student ratios and the Holocaust. David and Goliath becomes an uneven book, alternately compelling and essential, and scattershot and unconvincing.
To venture into something means he goes into. You can venture into the jungle, for example. That means you go into the jungle. So he's going into diverse topics, so lots of different topics. Teacher-student ratios, that means like, you know, 1 teacher to 10 students to 30 students, and how does that affect students? The Holocaust during World War II. But the author of this article is saying, you know, that's interesting, but it becomes uneven. So it's kind of like the book is not balanced. It's becoming a little bit too, I don't know, I get this, yeah.
Can it say odd?
Yeah, it's kind of becoming, yeah, it's getting a little odd. Yeah. Uneven describes as like, you know, maybe there's too much of one and not enough of the other, you know, so it's becoming unbalanced, a little odd. So alternately, so it's, you know, when you alternate something, you go back and forth. You do a little bit of this, and then you do a little bit of that. So on the one hand, it's compelling, it's interesting, you want to be reading it, and it's providing important or essential information. But then, on the other hand, it's becoming scattershot. That means like kind of just a lot of things going everywhere. Whenever you, when something scatters, like if you throw a bunch of marbles or something and they scatter all over the ground, they just become very kind of chaotic. It's not very organized. So that word scattershot is like his stories and the way he's telling things are becoming too broad, maybe too scattered, and they are not convincing. They're not, not right, Ahmad, not consistent. So the book does, according to this author of this article, the one who read it and he's reviewing it, he thinks it's becoming, that's a good word, consistent. It's not, his way of telling the story is not being consistent. So that makes this person feel like his stories are not persuasive. They're not convincing him. To convince somebody is to make them believe what you want them to believe, to agree with you. So he's not really he's reading the story and saying, I don't really believe that, or I don't really think that's true, or he didn't really prove it to me, So his chapter on the damage caused to many bright students by the most exclusive universities should be required reading for every parent worrying about which college a son or daughter should attend. Gladwell argues persuasively that the most prestigious colleges end up frustrating the ambitions of many bright students who would be better off at mid-level universities. Okay, Hamid?
Okay. His chapter on the damage caused to many bright students by the most exclusive universities should be required reading for every parent worrying about which college son or daughter should attend. Gladwell argued persuasively that the most prestigious colleges end up frustrating the ambitions of many bright students who would be better off at mid-level universities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So his so he has lots of chapters in the book, and he's talking about one chapter where Malcolm is saying that they're bright students. So bright is another word to say smart or intelligent. So we have these really highly intelligent or very smart students, and they go to these exclusive universities. So an example of that would be something like Harvard, Yale, Stanford. These are very exclusive, meaning very few people actually get into them. You have to have very high grades, good test scores, maybe you have to know some people, maybe you have to have some money, okay? And they try to go to these schools, but because they think they will be better. These schools, these universities are supposed to be better, and what Gladwell is arguing, what he says, and he says he's very persuasive, so it's very convincing, is that these prestigious or exclusive or special, unique colleges, what actually happens is the students are becoming frustrated. So they end up frustrating the ambitions. Ambition is what you want to do. If you want to become a scientist. We all know Hamid's ambitions of studying chemistry and becoming a professor of chemistry, right, Hamid?
Yes.
That's your ambition, okay? So a lot of these very bright students would be better off, there's a phrasal verb there, to be better off at mid-level universities. So they would actually probably do better to not try to go to these exclusive ones. We don't know exactly why, but that's one of the stories that Malcolm tells in the book. All right, but that chapter is preceded means before, what comes before. But that chapter is preceded by a lengthy discussion on class size in the public schools of the Connecticut community of Shippaq Valley that reads like a superficial treatment of a much larger policy discussion, and that time and again condescends to the reader. Sorry. Okay, who's next? Ismail?
Yes.
Go ahead.
But that chapter is preceded by a lengthy discussion on class size in the public schools of the Connecticut community of Shippaq Valley that reads like a superficial treatment of a much larger policy discussion, and that time and again condescends to the reader.
Okay, so the chapter before, so while that's the uneven part, Ahmad, that we see here. So while this chapter was really great and very convincing, this chapter that came before it, the author says, was a lengthy discussion about class sizes, which is a big thing in the United States, talking about how many students to one teacher, for example. And this person who wrote this article is saying it seemed very superficial. It wasn't. It was like, you didn't really convince me. You didn't show enough evidence, and so it kind of condescends to the reader. To be condescending is to like make you, like if you try to make yourself think you're smarter or something, and then that's condescending to the person who's reading. So that's what he's talking about here. So while one chapter is very convincing and persuasive, and you go, yes, that makes sense, and you really like it, another chapter with a different story is kind of like, that's not really that good. Not true. It's not very convincing. I'm not being persuaded. All right. Can you see why Teresa de Brito was so worried about Shepag Valley? Gladwell asks. That's the part of condescending. Gladwell asks, after plying us with tables and statistics and recounting de Brito's work as a principal, struggling with declining enrollment. At other points in the book, he asks, did you follow that? And can you see why this is so fascinating? All right. Omar, hi there. Want to read?
Oh, yes. Hello, teacher.
Okay.
Sorry. Starting from where? From can you, right?
Yeah, sure. Can you see why?
Can you see why Teresa de Brito was so worried about Shebog Valley? Gladwell asks, after applying us with tables and statistics and recounting de Brito's work as a principal struggling with declining enrollment. At other points in the book, he asks, did you follow that, and can you see why this is so fascinating?
Yes. Okay, I was just writing. Yeah, so that's why this is the part where he explains it feels condescending. So, you know, as a reader, you're not an idiot. You're reading this book, and so you're following along with Malcolm Gladwell as he tries to tell you the story. But this person thought it was kind of condescending. It was like he didn't really need to put these kinds of sentences in there. You know, especially this one. Did you follow that? It's kind of asking you, like, well, do you see what I'm talking about? It's kind of a condescending thing when you're presenting that to an educated audience, let's say. It's not like he's teaching third graders who are just learning something for the first time. And then he says things in the book like, can you see why this is so fascinating, why this is so amazing or interesting? So that's becoming frustrating to this person who wrote this article. He says, it's frustrating, not fascinating, to see a writer such as Gladwell adopt the didactic tone of the narrator of a television science program. And yet, much of David and Goliath truly is intriguing and inspiring, especially when Gladwell discusses desirable difficulties. Okay, Robeson.
Okay. It's frustrating, not fascinating, to see a writer such as Gladwell adopt the didactic tone of the narrator of a television science program. And yet, much of David and Goliath truly is intriguing and inspiring, especially when Gladwell discusses desirable difficulties.
When he discusses. So it's frustrating. So as a reader reading it, he became frustrated. He wasn't thinking, oh, this is fascinating, and this is great. Because this word didactic just means teaching. So you guys, he takes on kind of like this teaching tone, like I'm telling you this, and now this is what you should be learning from this, rather than just letting the story teach what he wants you guys to learn, you know. So it is rather, that's kind of boring to the person who wrote this article. And yet, so here we go, and yet, he still says that much of it is intriguing. That means interesting, like you really want to know what he has to say about things. And it's also inspiring. It's motivating. It helps you think, oh, wow, this could be something that I could learn from. Especially when he talks about the desirable difficulties. So a difficulty usually isn't equated with being desirable. We don't usually think of, oh, I want to have more difficulties in my life. But he's saying that actually there are desirable difficulties, difficulties that help you be a better person, for example. So a high percentage of prison inmates are dyslexics, he tells us, and so are a high percentage of entrepreneurial millionaires. Both facts are reflections of the personal challenges dyslexics face and the way they respond to them. In a similar vein, Gladwell's account of the journey of Dr. Emil J. Freireich is unforgettable. Okay. Robson, did you just read? Yes. Shabazz.
Yeah. A high percent of prison inmates are dyslexic, he tells us, and so are high percentage of entrepreneurial millionaires. Both facts are reflection of the personal challenges dyslexics face and the way they respond to them. In a similar vein, Gladwell's account of journey of Dr. Emil J. French is unforgettable.
Mm-hmm. Right. So he's basically telling the story that, you know, a lot of people who have had dyslexic are also in prison. So they're prison inmates. An inmate is a person who went to jail. Okay, so they're in prison now. So a lot of people, and you could say that that's not success. So a lot of people with dyslexia maybe had a lot of failure and trouble through school or something, and it led them to do things that landed them in prison. But on the other hand, a lot of entrepreneurial millionaires, so people who have become very successful with money at least, are also dyslexic. So these are reflections. So when you reflect on something, it means you think about something. So this is something to think about. How do people respond? Respond is how do you act to something. To personal challenges. So if your personal challenge is that you can't read very well, how do you respond? Well, some people responded maybe by doing things that weren't helping them be successful, but then other people responded in ways that made them tougher, made them want to fight harder, want to succeed even more. So that's kind of what he's talking about, those desirable difficulties. And this guy right here, Dr. Emil J. Freireich. All right, so something that's unforgettable is also memorable, something that you remember, you can't forget. So here he says, Freireich, the son of, yes?
I'm sorry for interruption. I was just
No
going
problem.
to ask, what's the difference between focus and concentration?
To focus on something, it's very similar. To focus means you have to not let everything around you distract you. You have to just look at like one thing. So if we're focused on this article, we're just reading the article, not typing, not Skyping, not eating, that kind of stuff. And then to concentrate is a little bit. The only thing is different is it has more of a meaning of to think about something. But it's to concentrate on something is to focus. But the concentration is the thinking part of it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Freireich, the son of Hungarian immigrants, is raised during the Great Depression in Chicago and suffers through a childhood of great poverty and neglect. That means his parents didn't pay attention to him, maybe. It makes him a hard and angry man and also gives him an unbreakable will. Those qualities serve him well when he becomes a doctor and leads a series of clinical trials of new drug treatments for child victims of leukemia. Okay, Tarek?
Yes.
You can read that for us?
Freireich, the son of Hungarian immigrants, is raised during the Great Depression in Chicago, and suffers through a childhood of great poverty and neglect. It makes him a hard and angry man, and also gives him an unbreakable will. Those qualities serve him well when he becomes a doctor and leads a series of clinical trials
Clinical. Yeah.
of new drug treatments for child victims of leukemia.
Leukemia. Yeah. Leukemia is
Leukemia.
a type of a cancer for, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, this is just another. This is one of the characters in the book, and we hear about his story. He grew up in very bad conditions, but it gave him an unbreakable will. So your will talks about your willpower. And if it's unbreakable, that means it doesn't matter how hard things are. You're just going to keep trying. You're going to keep trying, and that was a good thing for him. It says the trials forced Freireich to confront suffering and dying children every day. The trials are the tests that they did on patients. And to push himself and his patients to the limits of human endurance. How Jay did it, I don't know, one doctor tells Gladwell. But we do know, don't we? Gladwell writes. He had been through worse. The resulting drug cocktail regimen is now a standard cancer treatment and has saved thousands of lives. Okay, Alexandra, you want to read that whole thing?
The trials force Freireich to confront suffering and dying children every day, and to push himself and his patients to the limits of human endurance. How Jay did it, I don't know, one doctor tells Gladwell. And we don't know, but we do know, don't we? Gladwell writes. He had been through worse. The resulting drug cocktail regimen is now a standard cancer treatment and has saved thousands of lives.
Good. We're going to be running out of time, so I'm just going to keep going here. But in the next chapter on the civil rights movement, Gladwell is once again on shaky rhetorical footing as he discusses Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1963 battle against segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. Gladwell's contribution to this oft-told American story is to compare the movement's tactics, which helped lead to the passage of the Civil Rights Act, to the trickster tales of many a folk legend. Okay, Ampara.
But in the next chapter, on the civil rights movement, Gladwell is once again on shaky rhetorical footing as he discusses Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1963 battle against segregation in Birmingham, Alabama. Gladwell's contribution to this oft-told American story is to compare the movement tactics which helped lead to the passage of the Civil Rights Act, to the trickster tales of many a folk legend.
Yeah, folk legends or folk stories. So this is, the rabbit is the slickest of the animals the Lord ever made. That's the way they talk down south. And the does is supposed to be the. He writes, quoting the tale of Brer Rabbit, popular among slaves. Like tricksters, the movement's leaders fooled the Birmingham police into thinking its ranks were bigger than they really were and refused to play by the rules because black people had nothing to lose, Gladwell writes. As he makes such obvious and not especially profound arguments, Gladwell can't help but gloss over the complex and bloody history of African American resistance, courage, and suffering. Okay, I'm going to keep going here because we're almost done. In the end, David and Goliath feels like the work of two very different writers. One is an intelligent thinker who feels the need to illuminate hidden human truth, and the other is a showman, a master of ceremonies, shuffling one performer after the other onto a stage, afraid that if he lingers too long on one act, he'll lose his big audience forever. So he wasn't convinced about the way Malcolm wrote about Martin Luther King Jr. He thought it was covering, it was kind of just like, he said glossing over. That's a good phrasal verb here. To gloss over something means you quickly go over it, but it's not very in-depth. It's not very profound. It's not very detailed. So he kind of just wanted to use that story to prove a point, but this guy didn't think it was very persuasive, didn't go into enough detail. And so in the end, he thinks, it's a good book, but on the one hand, it's really intelligent writing, and it helps you think, and he's, of course, helping us see hidden truths, about humans. But on the other hand, it's like he's telling story after story just to kind of to keep people interested, but they're not really that profound, the stories. All right, sorry we had to hurry up on that last one there. It did turn out to be a little long, but you guys can go if you need to, but I'll stick around a minute if you guys have any questions, or if you want to ask me anything, or you want to tell me something. I don't know how I wanted to have a little bit of a conversation about what you think about difficulties. Have you found that overcoming difficulties helps you in your life? Alexandra, for example, or somebody want to?
Of course it helps.
Yeah.
Because there is no development without hurdles, without obstacles. So the harder, the better.
Mm-hmm. Robson, you agree with that? You wrote yes in the Verbling chat. Ishmael, what do you think about difficulties and overcoming difficulties?
Yes, Lisa, I couldn't understand everything in the passage, but it's important to tackle down the big problem, especially in young age,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to be successful in the future.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. Sorry.
If you struggle with problems in small age, you will be more successful when you became an adult,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah. I think that this Malcolm Gladwell would agree with what you just said, and that's probably what he's trying to tell people in telling these stories. So I would say the book seems like a message, to have a message, not necessarily of hope, but maybe of encouragement, to encourage people to maybe not get so depressed or frustrated if you are having difficulties in your life, but really more look at how do you respond to those difficulties. How are you going to handle situations that come up for you? And maybe reading, I think he probably wrote the book to inspire people. So if you read other people's stories, sometimes that can be very inspiring. Maybe if you identify with a certain person who has a similar experience that you're having and they overcame that experience, then that can give you motivation to keep going also. So, Hamid, you wrote success about difficulty equals experience, experience equals success, and success equals satisfaction. Yeah?
I think it is clear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I think it's not, it's something that I think we all know, but when we are having those difficulties ourselves, we can get very overwhelmed and frustrated, and we need sometimes to be able to look outside to other people and say, oh, okay, they did it, I can do it. Because sometimes we might get too frustrated or discouraged is a good word. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Does anybody have any questions before we go? Any specific to the article? Or I want to say it was a difficult article, so if you were having trouble, don't worry about it, because when I first read it, I didn't think it was so difficult, but now when I was rereading it with you guys, I could see there were quite a few big vocabulary words. In terms of saying those words out loud, it's good practice because there are lots of syllables, and so it's really important to read them slowly and make sure you get in each syllable so that you say the word correctly. But also the ideas, it's good to be able to use that higher level vocabulary, and I know a lot of you in the class, that's what you desire. You want to be able to have English at a higher level, to be able to read books like that and journals and take tests and pass them so that you can maybe study in a English-speaking country someday. And so, if you want to, you can read that article again and make sure that you understood it if it was still a little bit difficult. But I think it sounds like you guys got the main point, which is always what I think is the most important, is the main idea of the article. So, it's good.
Lisa?
Yes?
Did you read this book before?
No, it just came out about, 4 days ago. It came out on October 1st. So I have not seen the book or read the book. I just read about it.
Okay.
So, but I have read other books that he has written, and I liked them. So, yeah.
You know what I feel when I read a book, something like that, book about success and how to be patient.
Yeah.
Like if you are sitting in front of an old man, always like preaching, telling something, and just giving like ideal cases, examples, and I feel like boring because it's not that kind of practical experience. Just throwing ideas. We all know it, but when we go through it, no one remember anything. Like. Yeah.
So what are you more? Would you be more interested in a book that would actually give you like a step-by-step how to achieve the success, or what would you prefer?
There was, yeah. I once read the book. Like they claim to give a formula for the success or how to be rich. I was just interested because I expected to see a lot of things. Yeah, there was a lot of like idea theories and lots of philosophies, a lot of examples from people like wealthy, like the founder for some big companies. It's all true, but I already have a lot of like examples about this. But the problem is I'm not able to manipulate the situation that I am. Everyone is a stage case, and yeah, it's hard to implement their own theory in reality.
Yeah. So do you feel like you're still struggling? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's kind of that, yeah.
Yes. And I think that the thing about these stories is that we always hear the story at the end. So we hear a little bit about their struggles, but it's not like you're in the middle maybe of the struggle, but maybe come back to you in 10 years, and then you will be able to tell the story of how you overcame certain obstacles. And I'm not saying that everybody, obviously not everybody does have success in that way. There's certainly people who try hard and do things and they don't. So that's another thing, that reading these stories can make it seem very simplistic. Like, you just try hard and it's going to have to work, right? But sometimes there are real things that are happening in the world that you don't have control over that can affect whether or not even trying hard and doing good things and working at it will lead to success. So that's why I think the person who wrote the article was saying that sometimes it's very simplistic or like on shaky ground. When you're trying to make an argument and it's on shaky ground, it's like, it's not. You're not really considering all the possibilities and all the things that can affect the outcome. Right? So I don't know, Ahmad. What do you think?
Yeah.
On the other hand, the only other thing, like you could say, it's like kind of you either keep going and you keep trying, or you give up. Right?
The key element for success is to keep trying, not because you are not going to make it from first try.
Yes.
But the problem is, it depends on how do you see, like we have many perspectives for every goal, and if I see my goal from my narrow angle and just go for it, it's the main problem. I might not be able to go from this way. So it's kind of, yeah, there is need for like wisdom. The person himself who put a goal and fight for it should be like should have enough knowledge, or should be aware enough about this goal before he goes for it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, but I think it's true. Like you don't know. Like when you're 15, you think things are one way, and then when you're 20 and you've had more years of experience, you might have changed your mind a little bit. And then when you're 30, 40, you keep learning and growing. And so if you think at 15 I'm going to do this, and by the time I'm 50, you might realize that that's not realistic, or it might be that you just changed your mind too. Like you might just change your idea about what success is. So things happen, Yeah. And I think that's people see that a lot in their life. Like you think I'm going to do this and I'm going to be this, and then life happens, and then you have to adjust. And I think the key to people's success is, are you able to adjust, or are you stuck in thinking it has to be a certain way?
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And so Hamid says life is a cruel teacher. Well, that's one opinion, and it can be very frustrating. But I think what the key is always, okay, this is what happened. What am I going to do now? Because you always have a choice. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to go cry about it? Okay, you might have to cry about it a little bit. You might have to get mad, hit the wall, do something. But then what are you going to do? What's the next thing, So it's a process, and that's the learning of each individual person. How do I respond? And you might not respond the same way that your brother responds, or your mom responds, or your dad. That's what makes you different. So
I feel like it's more about the idea itself or the goal itself. If it captivated my imagination, if it's really worth to be like something that I'd really be convinced about it deep inside, then I will be assertive. I will be going for it.
Yeah.
But it's not that. Yeah, if it's not that big of a deal. If I'm not convinced 100%.
Sure.
Then nothing would be like, there is no solution for this problem. And most of the things that we came to in our life, something that we are not really sure about. We have to take a decision, but we are not sure about the consequences. We are not sure about which one is the right thing. I have came through like tons of examples in my life experiences that I should take a decision immediately, but I'm not sure about which one is the best for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out that I have no idea. There is no combination that told me which one should I choose.
Yeah.
And this simple decision might change a lot of things in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that goes along with what Hamid was saying about life can be a cruel teacher, because you don't know. You don't know what is going to happen, and you might be living along just happy and fine, and then your government does something stupid, or somebody in your neighborhood does something, and then something happens and it affects you. So yeah, you just gotta,
There was a movie or TV series turns bad, or kind
What's
of bad.
It called?
TV or series, I'm not sure. Turns bad. The chemist who started to make meth in his lab.
Breaking Bad. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but yeah, Breaking Bad.
Kind of that. So kind of consequences. One thing leads to another.
Well, and you always have choices, and I haven't seen that TV show, but I hear that it's like super popular, very, very famous, and it's about a guy who made a choice based on his own thinking about what he needed to do, so everybody does that same thing. We just don't know if it's the right choice. That's what Hamid's saying. It's like it's life. So you do it, and then you get feedback, and then if it's not good, then you might want to try something else. So. All right, Alexandra, I have to actually go because I got to take my son to a soccer game. He's going to be playing soccer.
Wow.
So yeah. Well, thanks for coming. This would be another good class for discussion, so we could talk more about how do we
you know, how do you make choices in life? Like Maud saying, like, how do I know what to do? Like, should I do this or should I do that? And what's the process of making a decision? Yeah. Yeah, well, that's something that a lot of us don't have these days, is we don't have good mentors or grandparents or people who can help us out, and so a lot of us are kind of on our own figuring it out. Sometimes books help, you know, sometimes they don't. Yeah. Okay, guys, thanks for coming to class. I'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a nice weekend. See you.
You too. Okay, bye-bye.
Hi everybody, this is Lisa with Verbling, and in this hour we're going to have an English reading class and hopefully a little bit of a discussion. For this class I chose a recent book review about a book that has just been released. It is written by an author, an American author who is quite popular these days. He has written several other books that many people like and have read a lot. He also writes for, I think it's the New Yorker magazine and maybe some other publications, but he often writes about interesting things to me. So since I'm teaching the class, I get to choose what we read. So it's interesting to me, and I hope it will be interesting to you. And it's something a little bit different. Sometimes we read articles about technology, science, business topics. This one is a book review, so it's this person explaining what he thinks about this particular book. So we will read it together, and then we will talk about the topic, and you guys can tell me whether or not you think it would be a book that you would be interested in reading. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this guy. His name is Malcolm Gladwell, and he's written books called The Tipping Point and Blink and some other ones. And they're pretty fun, easy reads about humans, success, why we do the things that we do, and what psychology and social sciences tell us about us. And so he kind of takes the science and the studies and then breaks it down into what we call layman terms and tells stories that helps us understand what the scientists are telling us through their research. So, all right, let's welcome everybody. Let's see, people are coming in. So I'm just kind of talking here. The cat is here with me today, so everybody can say hi. This is Raindrop. She'll be walking around. So hi, Amparo. How are you doing today?
Hi, teacher. I'm doing well, thank you. What about you?
Good. Pretty good. Hamid? He's only feeling so-so.
Yes.
So-so. Just kind of so-so. Anything you want to share with us today, Hamid?
Today I made one sample exam for my next
team that might not win against them, but a team from maybe, I don't know where, that's not very good. Probably they are called the underdog, but if sometimes the underdog actually wins, and so that's what his book is going to tell us about. All right, and I'm going to read this first part here and highlight it, sorry, and then have people read as we go along, and I'm going to pretty much go over the words that I have put in bold, and if you have any other questions, please speak up, okay? So Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath champions the underdog. Malcolm Gladwell explains the many advantages gained through adversity in David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. Okay, Amparo, why don't you read that part?
Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath champions the underdog. Malcolm Gladwell explains the many advantages gained through adversity in David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants.
Yes. Thank you. So in this book, he's going to explain, he's going to tell us about the many advantages. I think you probably know that word, but whatever's good about something. So the advantages gained, what you get through adversity. Adversity is stuff that's hard. So
sometimes if you have a difficult life or things have been hard, you work harder and therefore you succeed more. So this is the kind of story that he's going to tell us about. So that's the full title of his book. That's why they're putting it in these quotes here, the single quotes. David and Goliath, underdogs, so those people who are not supposed to win because they're not supposed to be as good. Misfits, people who don't fit into society so well. They look a little funky maybe, or you're kind of not sure that they're going to make it. You're wondering something about them, but they do. And then the art of battling giants, so going up against giants. Obviously, giants represents anything that would be big. So it's not a real giant. It's like going up against maybe big businesses or the establishment of education or against the most, the best teams of the world, that kind of thing. So that's what that means. All right, Hamid, were you going to show a picture of, okay, Hamid's sharing with us a picture of Malcolm the Underdog. That's the title of this article that I pulled from the Los Angeles Times. Probably you guys have heard of the New York Times, but Los Angeles also has a newspaper that's called the Los Angeles Times. And this is an article from there. I'm going to just make sure I give the guy credit here. This is a link to the actual article on their website. I just put it here in the Google Docs so that we can make it larger and I can do some bolding and things like that when I explain what the words are. So it's written by this guy, Hector Tobar. And Malcolm, let me just explain a little bit. Malcolm Gladwell, like I said, that's his name. He's an author, American author. This is the name of his newest book that just came out like a couple of days ago, David and Goliath. And do you guys know the story of David and Goliath? Have you heard that in your own languages?
No.
No? Yeah. David, I think it's a biblical story. David and Goliath. So David is it's kind of the story that explains like the underdog, the person who is weaker, going up a person who is much bigger and much stronger and winning. So in English, whenever people talk about a story that is like David and Goliath, they're talking about David who went up against Goliath. And Goliath was a big, like, monster-like, and David was able to defeat him or beat him with, I think it was just some rocks or something, yes.
Like Hulk?
Like what?
Hulk?
The Hulk? Yeah.
The real one.
Yeah. This is old days, in the old days. So yeah, so Goliath now means somebody like somebody's big, like Hulk, like the Hulk, yeah. And David represents somebody who is not necessarily strong, but smart and can overcome somebody a lot bigger and stronger than themselves. So this is what this book is about, is Malcolm Gladwell is championing, this is the verb to champion. That means when you support or you cheer on the underdog. And I just want to make sure we understand all the words in the title first. The underdog is the person who is not supposed to win. So when you have a soccer game, for example, say if you have like Barcelona, for example, is like a world-class team versus like, I don't know, another team, Gladwell, because he has some nice hair. I thought you were going to show a picture of Malcolm Gladwell. Let's get a picture. I want you guys to see Malcolm. He's a pretty well-known person here, but he does have some funky hair. So there you go. He's a fun guy, and like I said, he's written lots of books, so he is definitely somebody that you will read about or hear about if you are interested in this type of stuff. Kind of more intellectual, academic reading for people who aren't necessarily in school but still like to learn about this type of stuff. Okay. All right, we have Robson. Hi there, Robson. We just started reading, so Hamid's been providing some links in the Verbling chat and the Google chat for people who are joining us. I'm going to keep reading, and so we can keep going, because it is a little bit long, and I want to have time to talk about it a little bit. All right, so here is the actual article. What if we lived in a world where the weak were really strong and all of our disadvantages could easily become advantages? In his new book, David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants, best-selling writer Malcolm Gladwell tells us we're already living in that kind of world. Even something as debilitating as dyslexia can be an ambitious man's ticket to success. Okay. So, Hamid?
Okay, what if we lived in a world where the weak were really strong and all of our disadvantages could easily become advantages? In his new book, David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants, best-selling writer Malcolm Gladwell tells us we are already living in that kind of world. Even something as debilitating as dyslexia can be an ambitious man's ticket to success.
Yeah. This one you got to make sure you get all the sounds in there. It's debilitating. So.
Debilitating.
Yeah. There you go. Good. So he's basically talking about how can you turn disadvantages, so the things that you typically think are not helpful to success, into something that does give you an advantage or helps you become successful. So that's what he's going to be talking about, and he's saying we already actually live in that kind of world.
Exam.
Oh.
It was good.
Okay. You did a practice exam?
Yes,
okay.
by alone.
Uh-huh. Okay. And so you did pretty good?
Yes.
Oh, good. Is that for the exam that you're taking for the job, the
this exam is about academic exam.
Oh, okay, academic stuff. All right. Good. All right. Ishmael, how are you doing?
I am fine, thank you, Lisa. Hi, everybody. How are you, Lisa?
Good. Welcome. Haven't heard your voice for a while. Okay,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Shabazz, how are you? Hello? Bilal? All right, maybe you don't know that. And Tarek, how are you?
Yes, I'm fine. I'm doing good.
Okay.
What about you?
Everybody. Okay, so welcome everybody. You guys, I think, all know how this works. Shabazz, I didn't hear from you, so okay, there, your microphone's on now. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty well. How about you?
Good. Shabazz, where do
I'm pretty
you?
good. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Where are you from?
I'm from Pakistan.
Pakistan. Okay. Are you
I'm
living?
from Pakistan. Yeah.
Uh-huh. I can hear you. Good. Great. Okay, well,
Yes.
welcome to the class. I'm going to put the article up now in the screen share.
Okay.
And Hamid has posted the link for us in the Verbling chat and also in the Google chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Amparo, your Verbling chat isn't
I got
working?
it.
Amparo?
Not
Yeah.
anymore.
Oh.
You can use Google Chat.
Yeah,
Lisa?
yeah, that's fine. I'll be switching back and forth between the Verbling and the Google. So, but Amparo, you can just talk if you have a question too. Just
Okay.
speak up. All right. So I'm just gonna get started so we can use our hour together. So you guys, this is what you paid for. So let's get going. This is called Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath, Champions